welcome back to Servers RC. Today we're going to be working on the XMAXX, doing its first round of mods. So we're going to be doing the blue aluminum shock caps, the blue aluminum spring retainers, as well as the motor mount washer kit. So a lot of people always talk about the XMAXX and the XRT strip-in pinions and spurs, and I like to think a lot of the cause of that is basically chassis flex and that motor mount, just getting your mesh slightly off and shredding those gears. I have these on the XRT and I've had no problems whatsoever with my gears so far. So we're going to go ahead and get those installed. These are always my first rounds of mods I like to do. The blue is going to complement the green shock bodies really well. So we'll go ahead and get the camera set up and go ahead and get started on that first one. Okay, so now that we got this set up, we're going to start by removing the retaining screw in the front upper shock mount, and it should be a 2mm. So that'll be a 2mm. Again, if you're using a driver, just make sure you have your torque as well as your speed on the lowest setting for your clutch system, where you're not stripping anything out. Go slow to where you don't overheat the plastic threads. And next you will be popping out the shock retaining pin, like so. I usually just use a small Allen wrench to pop that out. So at this point you have your shock body released, and we will go ahead and make sure we have a cap ready as well as a retainer. So I did pull these blue caps off of the XRT, did a little bit more green on that, and we'll use the blue to complement the green shock bodies on the XMAXX. So we'll set these here ready to go. So I've done enough of these now to where if you have a shock clamp tool, that will greatly help you in getting these down. I've ran the retainers down quite a few times and fought with it trying to do it just by hand and grabbing them, and just never really was a smooth process. So I like to wrap a rag around the shock body. Try to grab a hold of it that way, and then use an Allen and the shock body, or in the cap head. I'll find a good spot to try to grab the body here. So there you go, you'll have that shock cap release and spin it off. So sometimes your bladder will get stuck in the cap, sometimes it'll stay on the body. You're going to need that bladder for reinstallation. Get your shock tool pulled off. And at this point you're going to spin the plastic spring retainer off. Set that off to the side in case you ever need it again. I'm going to go ahead and put the blue retainer on. You can set your preload after. I just like to get it down far enough to make sure that there's enough thread for the shock cap to go on. So now our retainer is installed. Go ahead and get our cap on. Some people do use thread lock on these. I don't, just because it's kind of a pain to get them off if you do. And I always like to run the setup, see where I'm at as far as shock weight or shock oil weights, and that way if I need to make any adjustments, it's not a pain to get that cap off. So when you switch to the aluminum shock caps, the width of them is different. So it comes with these small plastic spacers that you have to insert on either side of the shock cap head here. And I'll have to flip the truck around to do this, but the best way that I've found to do it is get your pin slightly through, grab a pair of needle nose, get your first spacer on one side, get it pushed through the eyelet just to the other side, and if you rotate the shock body like so while it's in the perch here, it'll give you just enough room to get in with a pair of needle nose again, hold that other spacer in, and then shove your pin through. So I'm going to flip the truck around real quick to do that process. Adjust the camera a little bit so maybe you can see some of it. Okay, so you will grab your pin, get that pushed through, so just enough to be able to get that first spacer on. You're going to take your shock, push it through a little too far, but get it in there like so. And this is where I say you rotate this shock body to the side like that. Grab a pair of needle nose. Take your retainer or your spacer. Get that in there. So there we go, through both spacers, your pin's all the way in. You can go ahead and put your retaining screw back in. Truck flip back around, and so there you'll be able to see we have the blue cap, green body with the blue retainer. On the XRT I did have obviously the blue shock bodies from the factory. I'd put a blue cap on it with a green retainer, and just personally I felt like the blue just blended in too much. It didn't really pop, so that's personal preference, but you know, I like the contrasting colors, so we'll go ahead and time lapse the rest of the install on those. And I'll come back to you guys and we'll do the motor washers. Okay, so now we got all of the shock caps and spring retainers installed. They look really nice. So this will definitely help with pulling shock caps off when you're jumping or whatnot. Last thing you want is to pull a shock cap, have all your fluid dumped, and be trying to service that wherever you're driving. So next up, we will do the motor washers. Flip the car over. And you basically have these 4 spots here. I like to do them one by one. And that is a 2.5 millimeter. You'll get that bolt pulled out. Open up your parts bag for the motor washers. Go ahead and check to see if these screws are longer that came with the kit, or if you could just use your stock ones. So they are slightly longer, so you're going to want to use the bolts that came with the kit. All you're going to do is drop the washer into the slot here. And drop your screw into place. This kit for only $6 is honestly totally worth it. I get if you're swapping motor and ESC combos, you might not need these depending on what aftermarket motor mount you're using. But with the stock setup, I feel like these are worth their weight in gold. All right, so we got those motor washers installed at all 4 points. Should definitely help with any chassis flex you have going on and that transferring to your motor mount and screwing up your mesh. So we are done for today's episode on the XMAXX. Some things we do have on the way are aluminum wheel hexes. I'm going to swap out a little bit of the blue as far as the axle nuts from the XRT. That way they have that color combo going. And also a skid plate root for the roof of the body, and we'll get that installed on the next episode with the XMAXX. Also have some items to go on the Slash Ultimate. So I believe that is the motor mount and a few other items. And I just picked up a sledge for the channel, so we're going to go ahead and get a first impressions on that. See what its weak points are, probably do the usual aluminum shock caps and whatnot, and get some upgrades on that. As always, thank you guys for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Any support you give me is much appreciated. Thank you guys.